चलो ये कर लेते हैं. This could be a great intro.
Hi, I'm Akshay.
Hi, this is Saurabh, and you are listening to the Founder Thesis podcast. We meet some of the most celebrated startup founders in the country.
And we want to learn how to build a unicorn.
Do you remember a time when shopping meant carrying a lot of cash in your pocket? Loyalty Rewards has been instrumental in helping shift consumers' attitudes and replace cash with card, and thereby paving the way for many of today's fintech unicorns. And Bijai Jayarajan, who founded Loyalty Rewards, is one of the few founders we have interviewed who have generated actual profitable exits for his investors when Loyalty Rewards was acquired by BillDesk for $100 million. Here's a peek into his fascinating mind and his attempt to fundamentally disrupt how we use the internet with his second startup.
My name is Bijai Jayarajan. I'm a technology entrepreneur based out of Singapore. Originally from India. My first venture was based out of India, and I ran that company for 10 years, post which it got acquired. And now working on my second venture. Equally excited to be doing the second venture as much as I was excited to do the first venture. So these are early days and putting the head down and working right now.
So, Bijay, where are you based? I mean, where are you from originally? Like, where are your roots?
Oh, I'm from Kerala, and more often than not, the way I say it is I'm an original Mallu, and I say that that way because I pretty much am born and brought up in Kerala, died in the old Mallu up till my 18 years. So first 18 years I spent there. So first time when I went out of Kerala, I had a hard time because I only spoke Malayalam, and the college, whether English or some bit of Hindi.
Where did you go for your graduation?
I went to a college called Loyola in Chennai. A great college, very transformational 3 years. But yeah,
Why did
initially,
you choose to go out and specifically that course, that college?
I think the only reason is that I think all of us in the family, including myself, we knew that remaining in Trichur is really not an option. It didn't open up a lot of opportunities. So the idea was to just get the kid out and give him an exposure and see where it goes. And we knew someone in Loyola, some of the relatives had gone and studied there. So that's the only thing which we knew. So they said, okay, let's send him there. Parents said, go study there. There was no particular reason. In fact, I did my bachelor's in arts and humanities, majored in history actually. So the idea was, the only thing that people knew in Trichur is, history and then UPSC. Maybe son could become an IAS officer. Very limited visibility to multiple opportunities or options. So I picked up and left and went and joined Loyola. And like you said, like the interesting point that you brought up, I went there and I saw this whole lot of really smart guys. And I was this guy who couldn't say excuse me when I sneezed. And it was a hard a time coping up, learning to talk, learning to talk in English, learning to make yourself presentable, making yourself articulate. It was a challenging yet transformational window. Those 3 years were, I always look at those 3 years as a very pivotal 3 years of my life.
So by 1995, when you were passing out, so what were you like at that stage? What did you want to do next? Did you have more clarity?
A little more clarity than when I originally started off, but not diversified. I went to Loyola and joined in the history department as a student. And typically, one would do that if you either want to be a professor or academics, and that's clearly not my cup of tea. The idea was to do UPSC and become a civil servant. And when you're in Loyola, the whole idea is, go to Delhi, write your civil services examination. And one of the most popular routes were going to JNU. So it is my 2 years in JNU when I was doing masters, is when I actually decided that UPSC is not what I want to do. I don't want to become an IAS officer, or that's not the line of work that I want to live my life with. And then got attracted to corporate world, and yeah, then pursued it from there. I think there was very clear visibility on what I wanted to do after that, and I've just always been focused on building life around the corporate world.
Well, how did that happen? I mean, JNU is a pretty insular institute, and most kids there are not so corporate oriented as, say, if you were in a B school. So, how did you get attracted to the corporate world?
I think two reasons. One is when you are in JNU, it's also a place from where a lot of students qualify and go on to become civil servants. And you have a lot of friends, and you started to see people who already cleared UPSC. Some of them IPS or IRS, IAS, IFS, and then you get a glimpse into their lifestyle. Working whether it is in Delhi or in one of the rural area, but the closer and closer I got and better visibility I got into what is life as a civil servant, while I admire their dedication and commitment to building this nation, I started to realize that that's not my cup of tea. That's not how I wanted to do things. So honestly, it was a puzzling period because I finished my masters and wasn't really qualified to go and do anything big in the corporate world. But that's really what I wanted to do. So I took a year off actually. I took a year off after my masters, as they. It wasn't that popular then, but as they call it, the gap year, right? I did a fair bit of interesting things. I stayed back in Delhi. I finished my masters and didn't go back to Kerala. I stayed back in Delhi. Parents were supportive. To send me pocket money every month to make the ends meet. I did a fair bit of travel during that window, backpacking across different parts of the country. Backpack into Bihar, backpack to Rajasthan, backpack to Kashmir, and also sometimes traveling alone, sometimes just with another person. It wasn't never with a large group, and it wasn't so much of a fun trip as much as it was discovering myself. So go to ISBT and catch a bus and go to wherever it takes you. So if you are in, for example, Jaipur, and if you want to go to Udaipur, you will sort of figure out what is the bus ticket fare from Udaipur back to Delhi. Keep that money aside so that I know I can get back to Delhi. And if there is money left, then go to Udaipur. So really, backpacking included, hitchhiking, or getting in a bus, getting in a train, whatever which gets me to the next city. Spend a bunch of days there. I've traveled across Rajasthan without ever checking into a hotel for many days. So it could be
How did you manage?
oh, brushing your teeth in the bus stations when you get off in the morning, taking a shower when you are in Chittorgarh Fort and you see a waterfall, so jump in the waterfall and take a shower. So pretty much using public facilities and traveling across. I went all the way up to Mount Abu on that trip actually. Nathdwara, Haldigati, Jaipur, Udaipur, everywhere, and yeah, Chittorgarh. So I did a bunch of travel during that window.
So 1 year you spent traveling. Then towards the end of the year, where were you at
Towards
mentally?
the end of the year, I decided to start working. Uh, in Delhi, at that point of time, if I had to start working, I would have again, become a copywriter in some advertising agency. That would make not enough money to fill gas in the bike. So actually got a visit visa, literally a visit visa, and went to this place called Muscat in Sultanate of Oman, and went there and sent out resumes to a whole bunch of companies, faxed resumes actually. These are the days of fax actually, and got a few interview calls. Went to one of them, and I got a job. Actually started working in an advertising agency. I didn't know enough to know that advertising agency has something called client servicing or something called creative or something called media planning. So I went there and give me some job, and what can you do? I can talk. That's what I can do. So I was a junior account executive. That's the first job in Muscat. I think by then I was probably 23, 24, 23,
Hmm.
turning 20.
But that was a pretty bold bet to buy a ticket to a country. You must have cost quite a bit, and with no clear sight of how it will pay back.
I think Akshay, there was never fear. I was never ever governed by fear. I always felt that if there's something which you want to do and you go for it with all your heart, you can do it. I mean, when you're going to a big country and if you can't get a job, what good are you? So I never felt that if I go there on a visit visa, I wouldn't get a job. That sounds ridiculous for anyone. So I just went there, and like I said, I could talk. By the time we're talking about masters in another year. The handicap of not being articulate, etc., had gone away, and I could talk. And yeah, I got a job. I never that I don't consider that as a bold step, because see, I wasn't going there saying that I need to get a top job, right? I need to get a job equivalent to one of the premier MBAs. And I was still grounded enough, saying that all I've got is a master's in history. So get a job and start somewhere. We'll figure out. We'll probably. So the idea at that time was, go work in the Middle East for a few years, and then go to the US and go do MBA from Harvard or wherever you can. I must say, I was, while on one hand I wrote GMAT and wanted to go to the US and do an MBA, etc. But I've also always been an Indophile, always personally been an Indophile. Want to be in India, want to live here. I wasn't one of those guys who felt that going to US and getting a job there was the end of the life, which is what a whole generation of youngsters grew up with, that feeling, right? I wasn't one of them. So while in Dubai, this whole new concept came along, called the Indian School of Business. And then I heard, people like Rajat Gupta and Sumitra Ghoshal and Deepak Jain and Pramod Sinha, and all of these names were drumming up the spirits. And the idea of being a part of a business school which is being created, from ground up, to create a business school of global standards in this part of the world, that was very appealing. So I applied straight away to ISB and didn't apply to any of the business schools in the US. ISB, in fact, didn't have any roots or backgrounds or nothing. So when I first applied to ISB, our application package was exactly the same that was being used in Kellogg that year. ISB had a partnership with Kellogg while it was starting up. And our applications were also evaluated in Kellogg that year, which, in other words, saying that if I had applied to Kellogg, I probably would have gotten in there as well. The criteria was pretty same, and I had a decent GMAT score, particularly for a humanities background student. And I had international work experience, so it wouldn't have been very difficult to go to a good business school in the US. But I went to ISB because I was really excited about the idea of being a part of a group that's creating a business school.
So you were in the first batch,
It's
is
it's
it?
it's
Like the first
it's
batch
it's
of ISB?
extremely sticky point. It's called the founding class. That's what we are called. Even the ISB, as the school now, refers to class of 2005 or class of 2003, but we are never called class of 2002. We're called the founding class.
So you were in the founding class of ISB. So what was that experience like? Was it another transformational experience like Loyola was?
Yes and no. Yes and no. But I think I had more fun in Loyola. Transformational, yes, because ISB was good learning. ISB had the best of professors that you could ask for, really, because ISB basically didn't have any professors on board, because this is just the beginning. I mean, they had one or two professors joined the school, but otherwise, it didn't have a spectrum of all subjects, all professors. So what ISB did is it went and picked and chosen the best professors for each stream from different parts of the world. So that one year, I was taught by professors from Stanford, Wharton, Kellogg, LBS, INSEAD, you name it. So the best of professors from the world in their respective subjects. If I had to be taught marketing, either Deepak Jain or Srinivasan, these are the best names in the marketing academic world at that time. If we were to be taught negotiations, for example, then Madan Pilotla from London School of Business will come and teach you. So it has an interesting model where we had really the best of professors coming in from different parts of the world and teaching. So from a curriculum and from an academic perspective, I believe that one year perhaps is probably the best in the world anywhere, including Howards and Whartons, because they didn't have the option to pick and choose the best from different places, right? So from a pure academic curriculum perspective, that one year perhaps was the best one year of management education in the world. So that was good. What wasn't so good is I really struggled. ISB had an amazingly outstanding class as founding class. I had, tons of IIT engineers floating around on campus, and I couldn't really compete. Academically, I couldn't compete because they were just really very, very strong. And yeah, I struggled through that window. By then, I had also become sort of, unlike the school days, which I talked about when I was dormant and not a studious kid, but through the Loyola years and JNU years, and then working in Muscat, working in Dubai, one has sort of developed an attitude about yourself, and you've got a winning smell smell to yourself. And then suddenly you go to this business school where there's so many guys with that winning smell that, this is typically what I've heard is this is typically what happens in IITians when kids from different parts of the world who are really the best of their lot in their area, and they go to IIT and they see a whole lot of other guys who are equally better or much better. And that's a very revealing year for IIT engineers in the first year of their campus. And for me, it was a little like I just suddenly got thrown into the middle of a whole lot of really smart guys. So that one year was pretty intense one.
And from campus, where did you get placed?
That is an entirely, challenging window. So I passed out in 2002. So you can imagine how the corporate world was in 2002, right? So
Okay.
once Rajat Gupta came to campus, and he's the founder of ISB, right? And he was at that time the pinnacle of his glory, right? He was the MD of McKinsey and stuff. And he comes and stands in front of us and tells us that in my 30 years of corporate life, I've never seen a year this tough for recruitment. So it was a struggle. It was really a struggle for the school. Also because, see, the school, this is the first class, this is the founding class. And getting this bunch of guys placed is extremely important for the school from a reputation perspective. Right? It was also a very expensive school, and it had a lot of press visibility, media visibility. So for ISB, the class getting placed is very important, even from a longevity perspective or even viability perspective. Will this model work? And at the same time, it was a terrible year from a corporate recruitment perspective, B school recruitment perspective. And I think all of these guys, all the folks who were associated with ISB did put in all the efforts that they could to make sure that calling companies and say, hey, there's a whole bunch of good guys, go to ISB to recruit. So that happened. And eventually I got recruited into Jet Airways. So my campus placement was into Jet Airways as a management trainee. I didn't, of course, remotely think when I was going to business school that I'll go work for an airline. The only airline experience that I've had before ISB was, 2 or 3 flights that I've taken before that.
You wanted to join like a marketing agency.
I was very clear that I wanted to go into marketing and maybe then general management, but clearly and joined Jet. Jet came to campus, had 5 rounds of interviews, and they had whole kind of psychology tests and group discussions and all of that. And yeah, eventually there were five of us who were recruited into Jet Airways that year. And yeah, that's how I came to Mumbai.
So 4 years at Jet, what were you doing in those 4 years?
Again, I think in some way I would look at that's a sort of a second transformational year, so to speak. In some way, I look at those 4 years as my similar to the years in Loyola, because that is the first true blue corporate job, right? Before that, in Muscat and Dubai, I was really young, juniorish, figuring out. But here, post a business school education, one gets some responsibilities, and that's the time when you can sort of prove yourself. So I worked in Jet for 4 years, and as a matter of fact, globally, airlines don't really recruit from business schools. So if you go to Harvard or Wharton or Stanford or anywhere, you hear that the VCs or the consulting companies or the iBanking companies, they're the top recruit, or tech these days. But you never hear that an American airline or Delta is the top recruiter, day zero recruit. It's never the case. So airlines typically don't recruit premier business school graduates. What happened is that year, while we were in Hyderabad, Mr. Naresh Goel came by. He was invited to one of the marketing functions, and he came to campus, and perhaps he liked what he saw. So he went back to the airline and told the HR department, go and recruit from ISB. So they didn't know what hit them. And like I said, there wasn't a management program established in Jet Airways. It was usual recruitment. People grow up the ladder, and it was a struggle both for the airline and both for the recruited graduates as well. Because when we went into Jet, Jet didn't have an established process to manage this thing, right? If you're in HLL, you know that you will go in as a management trainee, then you will go, area sales manager or whatever. There's a process, and it's been done for many years, and that organization knows how to manage that. Jet sort of struggled with it, so we were first put into different kind of trainings. So I'll tell you, it was one of the most fabulous things that could have happened to anyone. By virtue of by default, not by design. So Jet didn't know what to do with these guys. So Jet said, "Training karo." So I literally went through and worked in 30 departments in that airline. Many people who've been in the airline for 10 years probably didn't even know that there are 30 departments in the airline. So that was an amazing experience. And post the training, I ended up joining marketing team, and was straight away thrown into Jet Privilege Go take over. There was this department already existing, and the person who managed the department was moving on to manage another department, and there was a vacancy, and I was said go take over. So went and started managing that team, and I think wonderful time. Coincidentally, also very opportunistic time, because during that window that I was managing Jet Privilege, Jet went through an IPO, which means you need to dive deeper and deeper into the numbers, understand the financials of the frequent flyer program, revenue and liability and deferred liability and revenue booking and all of that from a financial perspective, because IPO is a pretty important thing for any organization, right? Then Jet went through an acquisition. He acquired Sahara. So I had the responsibility of merging their frequent flyer program with our frequent flyer program. Then I also had the responsibility of, while Jet went from being a domestic airline to an international airline, as again, time when I was heading the program. So again, my job to, with my team, recalibrate the program to make it an international program. How will the international accrual work vis-a-vis how it worked when it was a domestic program? Tiers and platinum. How many? If platinum was only 60 flights, maybe international, maybe that's 20 flights, for example. That kind of number crunching. So I think that led to my, by necessity, going deeper and deeper into the science of loyalty management as a business. So I
After Jet.
actually resigned from Jet, wanted to start up. Loyalty Rewards was incorporated during my notice period in Jet Airways. And I had a bunch of job offers when I left Jet Privilege. I didn't take any one of them because I wanted to start up, right? And I sat at home. I sat at home and tinkering with business ideas. I went and met organizations and telling them, retails and banks, and telling them, hey, we could do this and we could do this to your consumer loyalty science. And they were all very kicked about it. This is a very nice idea. Let's do this, Bijay. And I realized, how will I do it? I was just one guy. I didn't even have a website, leave alone technology or team or financials. Or so I realized that company aise nahi banta hai. Companies don't get created like that. You need more than just the business understanding. And of course 2 months salary didn't come in, and that wasn't easy. So panicked, saying, hey, I don't know how to start a company, and I'm not getting paid. So one of the job offers which I had when I left Jet Airways was Mastercard. So I actually called them back after 2 months and say, hey, can I still come and work for you? And yeah, sure, come. So that's how I ended up working in Mastercard. So I was the head of Mastercard's relationship with State Bank of India. So true blue account management job. And State Bank is a difficult client in the B2B world. Typically, if you can manage State Bank, you can manage anyone. It's a very demanding client, but interesting to work with. Very big opportunities to win together. So I had a great time working with Mastercard and State Bank, but also I had enough time to write a business plan. And yeah, like I said, towards the end of my Mastercard window, Mastercard was the day job and weekend job was fundraising. So I would practically go and meet every VC who's willing to give me half an hour, and would go and pitch to them saying that, hey, this is my business plan, this is what I want to do in the loyalty space, can you fund me? And I'm still working for
What
Mastercard.
was your pitch? Like,
It's really a paper plan, and it doesn't get done. It doesn't happen very often in India, but I actually got funded. One of those funds actually wrote me a term sheet, and I was surprised. I said, oh, nice. And then I resigned. After I got a term sheet, I resigned.
okay. And this was like just you alone. I mean, you did
I
not
didn't
have
have
any co-founders,
Yeah,
none of
it's
that.
it's just
You
me.
alone were. There was no team to talk about. It was just an
Yeah, it's
idea
just
which
an
you
idea
sold.
and a business plan and a PPT. It's not even me alone, right? It's not even me full. Forget about co-founder team. It's not even me full, because I'm still working with Mastercard. I hadn't even started. I hadn't even left to start up. So it was not even me full. It was really basically a paper plan more than anything else. And I think what really worked is, perhaps, I had worked in the loyalty space for 4 years, and that experience was useful. So probably what I wanted to do was interesting. And these are also very early days for the venture capital industry itself. Unlike India, where funding happens in a little more often and little easier than those days when it was very early days. But like I said, strangely enough, someone wrote me a term sheet.
And what was the business plan you had? Like, how did you see
I
it
think
getting
business plan
monetized?
was largely what got played out in loyalty rewards. We didn't deviate a lot. It was about managing loyalty programs for a whole bunch of organizations.
And the organizations would pay
Yes,
you a
there were
fees to
multiple
manage it.
revenue streams. Organizations will pay you a fees. We will also monetize the loyalty program per se. So if you have 1 million people in a loyalty program, you're running it for a retailer. So retailer will of course pay you for running that loyalty program, but then you'll also help the retailer generate some revenue from the loyalty program from these 1 million people. And say if you have 1 million people and each of them have say 5,000 rupees of discretionary spending capability in a month, that is 5 billion, right? 5 billion is 500 crores in a month. And if you are able to channelize that discretionary spend capability into your partner organizations, and if you can take, if you can take a percentage of that additional revenue that you're giving to those organizations for analyzing it, then you could make money. Strangely enough, 2008, what happened again? It was one of the lowest, corporate periods. That's precisely when I started out. And yeah, you know, I quit Mastercard. Started loyalty rewards operations. Technically incorporated in June of 2006 when I left Jet, but started operations as my being the first employee of the organization, and worked there for 10 years. Managed loyalty program for 10 years across India. That's pretty much what happened after that.
What was exactly the tech product or the platform that you built?
It's more from a loyalty program management. So you have say 1,000 consumers. You have their profile and you have accrual, you have redemption, you have communication opportunities to them, you have customer service, you have points accounting. So the holistic loyalty program management platform. I had used one like that when I was in Jet, right? I ran the loyalty program using one of the loyalty platforms. In fact, that was another interesting experience in Jet. When I started to work with Jet Privilege, they had a different technology platform. During my time there, we changed the technology platform. We licensed a platform called Chris from Emirates Airlines, incidentally. Emirates Airlines is this tech division called Mercator, and they had a loyalty program management engine, which we licensed. So I went through that implementation process, getting a new platform in place, etc. There was again good learning. So all of that did help. So one of the first things that we did in loyalty rewards is to build our own technology platform. It took a bit, but we said that rather than going and using some other existing loyalty engine, we want to have our own loyalty engine. So we took a few months to build that engine. And let's say I started in April, May, office was in place. By the time we got to December, we were probably 10, 12 people, out of which maybe 6 or 7 were technology and 3 were non-technology.
How would a person use the loyalty program? Like they would get a card which they would swipe, or they would show the card number and the retailer's POS would capture that, and that POS would talk to your system and tell you that.
We didn't want to occupy a card slot in the consumer's wallet, and we didn't want the consumer to pull out a card and do some incremental efforts for him to get those points. We wanted to make it seamless. That's on one hand. On the other hand, luckily, our clients were all banks. So in India, interestingly, most of the banks that we started to work for didn't have a loyalty. And basic proposition from the bank to their consumers was that, hey, use your debit card to pay directly at a shop rather than going to an ATM, withdrawing money, and then going to a shop and spending, right? So you have a debit card in your pocket, don't think that it is an ATM card. And consumers didn't know that at that point of time. Uh, 99% of the debit cards issued by these banks were being used as ATM cards. So consumers would go to an ATM, withdraw cash, and then go spend that cash. For bank, it's a double whammy because every time consumers withdraw money from an ATM, it's a transaction, right? But it costs bank money. And on the other hand, if they could get the consumers to spend directly at a merchant outlet, as an issuing bank, the bank would make some money. Bank would get what they call interchange. So it was classic 101, where you knock off cost on one side when you don't have an ATM transaction and convert that into debit card transactions on the other side, you generate revenue. So it was a profitable model for the banks. And we were telling the banks that, listen, launch a loyalty program to incentivize this behavior. Banks found sense in it. And so we were essentially saying, just use your ATM card and go and spend. Whenever you spend directly using the ATM card, we will give you some points. We, in the sense, the bank would give those points.
So when did you acquire the first few banks?
Strange, and again a lucky break for us. Our first client was also the largest client anybody could aspire to get. So our first client was State Bank of India.
Wow. And this was because of the MasterCard relationship?
Partially yes, but not so much. The reason why I say partially yes is because at least I knew who is who in State Bank. But answer is no, because knowing who's who didn't help us get the deal. So I did go and tell, say, State Bank, hey, why don't you run a loyalty program and convert all of these debit card transactions into these ATM transactions into debit card transactions? And State Bank sounds good. Can tell us a little more about it. So we sat, worked with their team, and gave them the full, spiel about how this is a profitable model and what are the details of running this model. And at the end of all of that, State Bank said, "This is all good, but who will run this?" I said, "We can run it for you." But they said, "No, we can't. We can't just give it to you. We are a public sector bank, and so we need to do an RFP." And I felt, quite let down, because I had worked with the bank for a few months to generate interest and make them understand the benefit of having this and all of that. But public sector bank is, it is what it is. So they had to do an RFP. They did an RFP. 10, 15 companies came and pitched for it, and there were different rounds of 10 companies became 15 companies, then 7 companies, then 5 companies, then last 3 companies, and eventually we won that RFP. And that RFP was, so hard for us to win. It was online, reverse auction, forward auction, all of that State Bank did. So we had to bid and quote the lowest charge to win that. We were L1, and then we won it. And yeah, then honestly, Akshay, there was no looking back after that. From State Bank, then Punjab National Bank, then Central Bank of India, then Bank of India, then Union Bank, then Corporation Bank, then Karur Vysya Bank, then Federal Bank.
In how much time? Are you talking like within a year you acquired all these banks, or
No, I think that's
what was the
that's
trajectory?
another interesting thing which we did. When we won State Bank, of course, that was a big win, and I know our investors were very happy that gave this bloke some money, but it seems to be like they got a good client. So shall we go and get a whole bunch of new clients then? And we said no. So internally as a team, by then in Loyalty Rewards, we said, we've bitten off something very large. Let's chew this well. Let's not go after the rest of the markets very well, because we need to prove it to ourselves as well as to the bank that we can run this well, because that was the first client. We had one or two small, retail clients by then, but they were not really anything substantial. State Bank was the first real large client, right? And so we put our head down and didn't do anything else for 12 months. I think that was one of the smartest things that we did. When I look back, we literally put our heads down, got our technology in place, got the processes in place, got the people in place, and started to run that bank's program really, really well. And by the end of 12 months, the number of debit card transactions that the bank had really took off. So we had this interesting graph which said pre-loyalty program 24 months and post loyalty program launch 12 months. And you can see a decisive departure where the line goes up once the program is launched. So we only needed that graph to take shape and get our processes and technology in place. So after 12 months, then we went to town to meet other banks. We just had to present this, saying, hey, this is what loyalty program does to you. And when this happens for you, this is the math. You save so much money from ATM transactions, you make so much revenue from POS transactions. So this is the math. And I think we signed up 10 banks in the next 12 months. That was pretty rapid.
And you would also take care of marketing the program to the bank
Yes,
customers?
we used to call it end-to-end loyalty program management. So starting from managing crediting points to consumers' account, to facilitating redemption of those points, to carrying out millions and then hundreds of millions of marketing emails and SMS campaigns, to building the website for the loyalty program, managing that online consumers could come and log in and redeem and view their points, all of that, to managing the customer service center where a consumer could call and say, hey, I have these many points, what can I do with it, all of that. So it was fairly end to end, where the bank got their loyalty program managed 100%. It was our pitch was itself end-to-end loyalty program management. Their websites, their mobile apps, and by then my technology team was, like I said, 6-7 people. Then it became 25 people. Then tech team was 50 people. By the time I actually exited the company, my tech team was maybe 120 people, 120 people technology team. When I was exiting again, Loyalty Rewards ran loyalty program for 73% of all debit cards issued in India. That's a humongous market share, right? That's a country as large as India. And to give you numbers, that is also adding up to 1 billion consumer profiles. So at some point of time in our technology systems, we had profiles of consumers across different programs that we run, not deduping, cumulatively 1 billion consumer profiles for which we ran loyalty programs. In fact, in the quarter that I exited, that is end of 17, December 17, the cumulative value of loyalty points in the market exceeded 1,000 crores. So the program had got scaled reasonably well. We were points accrual. We were crediting, I think, over 5 billion points a month. Uh, and 200 million transactions every month. Those numbers were, 1 billion consumer profiles, 73% market share. So by then it had got played out well, stabilized. Organization had matured. There were processes and HR department and employee handbook and leave policies and all of that, and it became a reasonably stable organization.
So why did you decide to exit?
Multiple reasons. One is the smaller reasons first, and most important reason last. One is, I had an investor right from the beginning, like day zero. So I looked at my investors more as partners rather than actually venture capital investors. I felt that we pretty much built this together. It's never that I started a company and an investor came in later. This is my company. I felt that this is our company. And came in and Venture East and great board meetings, great investor relations. Like every other founder investor relationship, we've had our highs and lows, we've had our fights. But I think more or less, overall, I really liked my investors. And I think they played an important role in helping me mature as an entrepreneur. And in 2015, investors exited. So the Series C was more of a strategic investment where strategic invested into the company and acquired Series A and B investors.
Which investor
This
was
was
that?
BuildDesk, a company called India Ideas. They acquired my Series A and B, and they also invested a substantial amount into the company as primary investment as part of the Series C fundraise. So one is, after my investors exited, I sort of felt a little lonely because I had really gone close. I think we had professional relationship grown over a period of time into personal relationships, and love hate as it will be always, but it was a good relationship, and it was, I felt a little lonely.
They were almost like
They
co-founders.
they were, not, I can't say that about Series B, but I can say that Venturies definitely was there from day zero. But more than co-founders, we had very healthy relationship, and very. I'm also one of those founders who engage with the investors a lot. It was not like take the money and tata bye bye. I actually worked with them closely. I kept them informed about what's going on. Took advice very very seriously whenever I felt confused. Didn't feel uncomfortable picking up the phone and calling them and saying, hey, what do you think about it? I can't figure out, what's your advice. And I think they felt good about that as well. And so the relationship was very healthy. And when they suddenly left from the board, there was no more that kind of board meetings. And, we weren't drinking after the board meetings, and we were not celebrating as much as we used to. I felt a little lonely. That's point one. Point two, by then company had also got stabilized, Akshay. We had our systems and processes in place. And I think some of the things that we did were very, very useful for me. We had quarterly appraisals. It started off as annual appraisals, and then at some point of time, we broke that into 4 quarters. And we also made appraisals a very quantitative process. So every person in the organization, irrespective of whether it's a tech role or operations role or sales role or relationship role, the requirement, what was the expected result from that employee, was broken down into numbers. If it's a relationship, we would say you would need to meet your client X number of times in a month. And if you have met X number of times, you will get score X, otherwise Y. So we're very, very quantitative, so that when you sit down for your appraisal, it was 5 minutes, it's over. Because that person will come for 3 months. I had to do 27 visits. I've done 32. I got 110%. And if it's 120%, you get X percent. If it's 100%, you get Y. If it's 80%, if it's 60%, these grids were formed. so much so that everybody had absolutely good degree of understanding what need to be done, and the task of setting this target for the year has to be done once in a year in either February or March, and April you kick that off, and everybody just goes by like that. The many other processes were very process driven as an organization and very quantitative as an organization, and very people independent to a very large extent. And as a result, towards the last couple of years, I started to find myself more free than not. I needed only 3 or 4 hours in a day to run that organization and still grow at 80 or 90% year on year. So it
Okay.
was cruising reasonably well. And then my investors had exited. And I have always been a workaholic, and the kind of a guy who goes to office at 8:30 in the morning every day and there till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock every day. And I started to find myself reaching office at 10:30 and 11, and I started to see myself leaving at 5:36. And things were great. Things were growing well. So I had this largish office in a reasonably decent sized team. I could sit in one corner as the founder CEO, a lot of respect. And young employees who come and join, they want to talk to the CEO once in a month when there is a coffee with CEO session where they could ask. So it was a lot of glory and all of that, but I wasn't burning. And yeah, I probably that's not what I like. I'm probably a builder than somebody who wants to sit back and soak it in. And around the spirit, a new idea gotten into the head. I cooked it in my head for maybe, close to a year. And then I felt that this is something which I believe in passionately. And it's also very difficult. So it will be challenging. So I went and spoke to the people who had acquired my Series A and B investors, saying that, hey, listen, this is going great and you guys are great, but you don't need me. It's only 3 hours and I'm not, fully busy. So why don't you just buy me out as well and I will exit? They were great guys, actually. They were really great guys.
How much stake did you have at that time?
They had significant majority. Let me put it like that. But I was still the promoter and MD and CEO. They had Series A, Series B, and Series C. As part of Series C, they had also put in 120 crores primary capital into the company. So they had substantial equity, but I was still the founder. And it was important for me to have them buy me out and then my exit, because that's the wealth that you've created over a period of 10 years. Uh, as part of their investing into the company, there was of course various put options and call options and exit timelines and all of that. I think none of us really looked at any of those agreements. When I spoke to those guys, like I said, they were great guys. uh, they first said, hey, this is going so well and we want you to run this for a long time. I said, yeah, nobody starts to leave, but I'm getting passionate about something else, and I'm not busy running this, 3 4 years, 3 4 hours a day is all it takes. And then we spoke a few more times, and that's over a period of a few months. I came back and thought about it. Do I really want to exit? Can I be, living without loyalty rewards, which has been, something which I created, I founded and ran it to this level? Do I want to leave this company? Am I really passionate enough to do the other thing? And they were very graceful. I think neither them nor I ever looked at any one of those agreements. Neither did we have too much of haggle around valuation or etc. We sat in a room and talked about it, and we agreed on a number, and they just bought me out, and I exited. It was a fairly pleasant and peaceful way of exiting an organization. Like I said, we never went back and looked at what was written in the agreement, neither from their side nor from my side. And yeah, they were making concessions for me to exit. I must acknowledge that. And I was not being a sticky guy in the process in which I exited or the valuation that I was asking for. So it takes two to tango, and it is all good. Exited in the end of December 2017. So I started in 8 and ran it till 17. It's actually 3 months short of 9 years. So I generally say it's 10 years a window. And yeah, 1st of January 2018 started the new venture pretty much all over again.
Again, you woke up one day and you had no office to go to.
It's pretty much like that. It's actually pretty much like that. Besides the fact that this time I was a little more matured, I had 10 years behind me. I knew a thing or two about how to start a company. It was not a greenhorn, so it was not the same experience, but in some way, it is, yeah, overall a different experience. Also, this is a global setup, so
So tell me about the idea which took a year to mature in your mind.
It's an innovative concept, Akshay. It's something which not intuitively think of, but the deeper that you think, ideally, you should get scared about it. The way the digital world is currently, right? All of us are extremely connected to the digital world. We use all kinds of digital products, and overall across this digital world, connected to everything and holding everything together, is this thing that we call the internet, right? And the internet plays an important role in everyone's life, including this conversation. Everything is connected to the internet, and we are all comfortable the way it's working out. In fact, we are more than comfortable, right? We know, if you were driving across to meet me, you say I'm 27 minutes away from your place, because your Google map is on and you know precise location. While you tweeted and you send a WhatsApp to somebody, you reply to an email, you're totally connected and powerful. But that's on one hand. You have close to 3 to 4 billion people who use internet every day today. In some way, when you look at it, these 3 or 4 billion people, on one hand, while they feel extremely powerful and connected and all of that, in reality, I started to feel that each one of us are actually extremely powerless. We are actually users of the internet by virtue of having no other choice. And as a matter of fact, everything that you use on the internet are owned, managed, and controlled by some other organization. In some way, let me put it another way. In an interesting way, is in the physical world that we all live in. You live in Delhi, you have a house there, and different parts of the places where people live. If you look at this physical world, and if you rewind a few centuries back, there was a period called monarchy, right? When kings and emperors and rulers, kingdoms, and during that window, there might have been a period when literally 10 people in the world own all land on earth. If you are Chandragupta Maurya, you own your kingdom. You pretty much own your kingdom. If anybody builds a big fence around his land and declares that this land is mine, then Chandragupta Maurya's people will come and kill him. That kingdom belongs to king, and the people live at the pleasure of the king, and people are called subjects. But of course, people loved their king. King took care of their people. Life is good. But in some way, the digital world today is evolved to a similar point where physical world was in monarchy, where literally a few handful of companies own everything that is on the internet, and there is no concept called private ownership of the internet. Just the same way it was in the monarchy, in the physical world, where there was no concept called private ownership. So because of the way internet is owned, basically, I'll tell you a startling number, that actually, if you add everything there is on the internet together, put everything together into one big bucket in terms of data, in terms of gigabytes or terabytes or petabytes or hexabytes, quantify all the data on the internet. Would you believe it if I tell you that almost 99% of all data on the internet are controlled and owned by just two companies?
Which two companies are those?
Your guess is as good as mine. Google and Facebook. Because both these companies also have gigantic wings within themselves, right? You have, which is the second highest searched website in the world besides Google? Google is where maximum search happens. Where is the second highest number of search happens? Would you know?
Facebook?
No.
Not aware.
YouTube. Today, whatever you want to know, how to make Irish coffee, you go search on YouTube.
Right.
So that's also Google, Gmail. 2 billion people on an average. If you have 5 GB of data in your mailbox, that's 25 billion GBs of data, owned, accessed, controlled by one company in their servers, with consumers having fairly zero degree of control.
So, what was the business idea that evolved from this thought
So
process?
that's a good question. So if this is how the internet is structured today, and consumers are all sleeping in some way, this is like Matrix, where we are all plugged into the internet, we are all using internet, we are seemingly made to feel happy, but we are actually quite powerless. And one day you're going to have to wake up and realize that you are absolutely powerless, and internet is owned and controlled by just few companies. So what can you do about it? So with the privacy being such a big concern, and with the way your digital life is currently structured, where your digital information is scattered all over, so that's where we came up with this thought that the true solution to this problem, a structural, fundamental, deep level solution to this problem, is ownership actually. Unless consumers actually have ownership, you will never have privacy. That is a fundamental premise of our product. That is a core concept of our product. On top of that, of course, we've built, additional, positioning of the product in the consumer's mind, and features and functionalities and services and all of that.
So you are selling consumers their own space on the internet.
No, I wouldn't put it that simply. Our product is a little more complex. Maybe eventually it might eventually have a simplistic positioning statement or line, but actually our product is a little more the concept is a little more than just that. But let me build on it. So if you want to have privacy, and for that, if you need to really own your own place on the internet, let's come back to the physical world, right? From the times of Chandragupta Maurya monarchy period, when there was no concept of private ownership, to fast forward to today's world, where private ownership as a concept is one of the fundamental pillars of human society. But how does the private ownership get manifested mostly? Mostly get manifested in the form of a home. In this physical world, to think of it today, for example, in this physical world, the most private place that you have is your home. It need not even be a owned home. Home as a concept, rented home or owned home, doesn't matter. That's a legal position. But your home is the most private place for you in this world. Home is also the place where you keep all your personal stuff that belongs to you, right? There is a whole bunch of things that you keep in the office. Who does that belong to? That belongs to your company. Where do you keep your personal things that you own? You keep it at home. And that's the most private place that you have in this world. So we're saying that it is time now for all of us to actually have a digital home as well. Just the same way we have a physical home, it's time for us to have a digital home. That's our core uh, concept. And then it evolves from there a little bit more. But the core concept is it's time for you to have a digital home.
So that was Bijay talking about his next big bet that he's hoping will transform the internet for consumers. Tell us what you think about his idea, and if you would like to sign up for the product by mailing us at hello@thepodium.in. If you like the Founder Thesis podcast, then do check out our other shows on subjects like marketing, technology, career advice, books, and drama. Visit thepodium.in, that is thepodium.in, for a complete list of all our shows.